Library patrons are not always known for, to use a phrase from H.P. Lovecraft, their olfactory immaculateness. In other words, they stink. Some of them. But unless you have to stand next to them, are downwind of them, or, worst of all, share the washroom with them, it's usually more of an unpleasant nuisance than a serious problem. But it was a serious problem with the man in the old black suit. As soon as he stepped from the elevator, the entire fourth level of the university library was enveloped in a fetid miasma which spread to every corner of the floor. Students nodding off over boring assignments, even students sound asleep, would spring to life or wake up and instantly head for the nearest stairwell. Not the elevator, since if the odoriferous intruder had used it to come up to the fourth floor, the noxious smell would be sure to linger within, and you'd risk having to burn your clothes by letting the elevator door close you inside, with the stench. It was hard to describe the stench, as your impulse was to flee, not analyze it. But it was far, far worse than the usual perspiration or excrement smells. No, it made you think of dead things, corpses, decomposition and decay, the fumes almost liquid in effect, getting into your nose, your eyes, and affecting your taste buds for days. The guy was a walking biological weapon, a human stink bomb. The horrible smell man was odd in appearance, too. He was middle-aged, tall, the large body bloated, as if it had been stuffed into his old, shiny black suit. The extreme pallor of the swollen face was accentuated by his shock of black hair, so dark it looked like it had been painted atop the huge head, and the eyes were two black coals. Empty. Empty. Dead eyes. He walked in a slow, jerky manner, and always headed to the same section in the stacks, the books on murder and historic crimes. And he walked alone, as everyone had fled. Everyone except Cassie. Cassie worked part-time as a page. You know, the people who put the books back on the shelves. Put the books back on the shelves, in the right places. The most important people in the whole library. For put a book in the wrong place, and no one will be able to find it, and use it. Cassie loved her job, as she could work around her class schedule, and she was very good, accurate, and fast. So, when she had a full cart of books to reshelve on the fourth level, she just couldn't leave, malodorous patrons or not. As soon as Cassie saw the man shamble into view, she rolled her book trolley to the other end of the stacks, as far away as possible. But the smell was still nauseating, and as soon as she was done her shift, she would run home for a quick change of clothes and a shower. A long one. Cassie always fled at the first sight or the first whiff of the disgusting stranger. But in spite of running away, she could clearly see the man was becoming more disheveled, the walk more spasmodic, the body more corpulent, grosser by the day. Vestiges of the man's fetid pong lingered long after he was gone. Now Cassie wasn't sure how long he stayed, or what he did in the stacks. So, one quiet afternoon, when she was all caught up, she decided to investigate his usual haunt, the murder books. Cassie did a quick scan of the shelves and immediately noticed something amiss. "What's this doing here?" she said, removing the offending item from between two regular library books. It appeared to be a pocket-sized diary or daytimer with a black plastic cover. Opening it, she began to read. June 23rd. I have reluctantly come to the conclusion there is only one way to break the hold he has over me, and that is to... Cassie froze. Literally. She was suddenly enveloped in a mephitic cloud of foulness, and at the same time her body went cold, frigid, 20 below zero cold, and looking up, she saw the man in the shiny black suit standing a few feet away and staring at her. His eyes were two pools of total outer space blackness. Up close, his turgid face was yellow and greasy, almost as if it were melting. Without a word, he thrust out his right arm, swollen sausage fingers extended. Cassie handed him the diary without thinking, and then, overpowered by the man's presence and his horrible smell, she reeled back, clutching the shelves for support and involuntarily closing her eyes. When she opened them, the man was gone. Cassie went home sick and was gone for several days. But when she came back to work, she was sent to clean up the fourth, as the other pages had been avoiding it and had left several trolleys of books to be shelved. The smell on the floor was still rather unpleasant, but Cassie was angry with herself for missing work and rolled up her sleeves. The sooner I get these shelved, the sooner I'm out of here. Cassie's work brought her to the stacks containing the books on murder. And, well, she couldn't resist the impulse to look. You know, curiosity killed the cat, but satisfaction brought it back. The diary had returned, parked between the same two books. She took it with trembling hands and randomly opened it. July 3rd. He has taken the bait. He will come over and discuss things after dinner tonight. And I've managed to convince him not to tell anyone else about the meeting. He will never come back. Now Cassie had been dimly aware of the bell announcing the arrival of the elevator, but didn't see the man until he tore the book from her hand, snarling, "Give me that!" It was not the man in the black suit, but a middle-aged man in gray tweeds with black-rimmed glasses and neat white hair. He looked academic, and Cassie had recognized him as a sociology prof. "Now what am I going to do about you?" he said. He was smiling, but without any warmth. "I didn't read it," Cassie blurted, and then realized it was a totally wrong thing to say. The professor leaned in towards her when they both heard the sound of the elevator bell and froze. Another car had arrived at the fourth level. The stench which enveloped them was far, far worse than the usual perspiration or excrement smells. No, it made them think of dead things, corpses, decomposition, and decay. The man in the shiny black suit loomed at the end of the stacks, and he was melting. Actually melting. "You!" the professor croaked in sheer terror. and the melting man thrust out his wet, rubbery hands and seized the professor by the throat and began to squeeze, squeeze, squeeze until the swollen sides of his yellow hands split, showering the surroundings with black, oily gore. The professor slumped to the floor dead as his killer's body collapsed and liquefied before Cassie's horrified eyes, until all that was left was a gelatinous, putrid mass and an old, shiny black suit. Security soon arrived, the whole library having been alerted by Cassie's ghastly screams. Cassie gave up her job at the library and her major, which had been in biochemistry. Watching substances change from solids to liquids no longer appealed to her. She didn't go into librarianship either. Instead, she's apprenticing in the trades, so she'll never have to hang around libraries again and can spend her working hours out in the fresh air. More money, too. Yeah, Cassie was always a very smart girl. The whole story was revealed and then hushed up when the little diary was examined. It seemed the professor owed money, a lot of money, to a prominent alumnus who was pressing him for payment. The prof couldn't pay, but invited the alumnus to come to his house to discuss the matter, and murdered him with a blunt object before burying him under the basement floor. At least, the alumnus had been buried there, for his corpse no longer lay under the fresh cement. The alumnus was a rather eccentric bachelor, and so no one missed him, and the whole story might never have been known. But for the diary, how it came there, and how the professor knew it was there, no one knows. But no one knows how a dead man could come back to take his revenge on the living. Hey, it's supernatural. One last thing. The diary had been placed between two specific volumes, Murder at Harvard by Helen Thompson and The Disappearance of Dr. Parkman by Justice Robert Sullivan. Both books concerned the 1849 murder of businessman George Parkman by John Webster, a chemistry lecturer at Harvard Medical College. Webster owed Parkman a lot of money, and when pressed for payment, Webster murdered the lender with a blow to the head, then dissected and cremated the body. Was placing the diary between those books an attempt at a clue? If so, it was a rather obscure one. After all, who remembers Professor Webster? Even though he was a real cut-up. In the end, he was sentenced and hanged, which must have burned him up. Burned him up, just like he'd burned up George Parkman. WSJ here. Sorry, not really. Not really, no. About the black humor. And share, comment, and please drop a like. Unless you consider this video a real stinker. Hope that was a coherent sentence. It didn't read like one. Anyways, please share, comment, drop a like. For more information on the classic Parkman-Webster murder case, which really is interesting, Please check out the link to an article about it in the description. And please consider subscribing to my channel for more tales of the night floaters and ghost stories of a librarian. And remember, stay hungry, unless this little yarn has put you off your feed bag.